October 25th, 1415. Dawn breaks over a muddy field in northern France. On one side stand 30,000 French knights. Heavy armor, polished steel, war horses bred for slaughter. They outnumber the enemy 6-1. Behind them, French nobles are already arguing about who will get the honor of killing the English king. On the other side stand 5,000 men. Half of them are sick. Dysentery has ravaged their camp for weeks. They have no armor, no horses, no food. Their king, Henry V, is 28 years old and has never won a battle. The French constable looks across the field and laughs. He orders his scribes to prepare a list of English nobles who will be captured. He does not plan to kill them, he plans to ransom them. He is so confident of victory that he has already decided which French noble will claim which English prisoner. What happens in the next 3 hours will destroy the flower of French nobility. It will make England a legend, and it will prove that arrogance is the deadliest weapon on any battlefield. The English army should not even be here. 5 months earlier, Henry V had landed in France with 11,000 men. He had besieged the port town of Harfleur. The siege lasted longer than expected. The town fell, but at a terrible cost. Dysentery swept through the English camp. Men died by the dozens. Their bodies were burned in mass pyres. By the time Harfleur surrendered, Henry had lost nearly half his army. The remaining men were weak, starving, and desperate. Henry decided to march north to Calais, where English ships waited. It was a surrender march. He wanted to show the French that he could walk across their kingdom and they could not stop him. The French king, Charles VI, was mad. His kingdom was ruled by factions. The Armagnacs and the Burgundians had been killing each other for years. Now they faced a common enemy, but they could not agree on strategy. The Duke of Burgundy refused to send his troops. The French army that gathered was massive, but it was led by men who hated each other. Henry's army marched for 17 days. They had no supplies. They ate unripe grapes from vineyards. They drank from muddy streams. More men died. By the time they reached the village of Agincourt, the English had been reduced to 5,000 fighting men. The French had gathered 30,000. On October 24th, the two armies faced each other. The French were so confident that they argued all night about how to divide the spoils. The English spent the night in silence. Henry walked among his men. He spoke to them quietly. He told them that if they died tomorrow, they would die as brothers, and if they lived, they would be remembered as heroes. The next morning, St. Crispin's Day, the battle began. The battlefield was a narrow strip of land between two forests. The French could not use their full numbers. They had to attack in a straight line. The ground had been plowed the day before. Then it rained. The mud was knee-deep. Henry knew this. He had chosen the ground carefully. He placed his men at the narrowest point. On the flanks, he positioned his archers in the woods. They were hidden by trees. The English army saw 5,000 starving men. They did not see the 6,000 arrows that would fall on them in the next hour. The English army was arranged in 3 divisions. The center was commanded by Henry himself. The right wing was led by the Duke of York. The left wing was under Lord Camoys. Between each division stood the archers. They had planted sharpened stakes in the ground before them. These stakes were angled toward the enemy. Any cavalry charge would impale the horses. The archers wore no armor. They carried long bows made of yew wood. Each bow was 6 feet tall. The draw weight was over 100 pounds. Only men who had trained since childhood could pull them. An experienced archer could fire 12 arrows in a minute. 6,000 archers could fire 72,000 arrows in 1 minute. The French army was arranged in 3 lines as well.
The first line was the heaviest. It included the Duke of Alençon, the Constable of France, and hundreds of nobles. They wore full plate armor. Each man weighed over 60 pounds in steel. They planned to walk through the arrows and kill the English with swords. The second line was smaller. The third line was the reserve. Behind them all, the French had positioned their cavalry on the wings. Their job was to destroy the archers, but the woods were too narrow. The cavalry could not maneuver. They would charge anyway.
At dawn, the English archers stepped forward. They wore leather jerkins. They carried no shields. They looked at the wall of steel before them. Then they drew their bows. The first volley rose into the sky. The arrows arced over the battlefield. They fell like rain. The French knights raised their shields. The arrows bounced off their armor. The French laughed. They began to advance. They walked slowly. Their armor was too heavy to run. The mud sucked at their boots. Every step was a struggle. The second volley came, then the third. The arrows did not pierce the armor, but they found gaps. They struck visors. They pierced armpits. They hit horses. The horses screamed. They reared. They threw their riders into the mud. A knight in full armor could not get up from deep mud. He flailed like a turtle on its back. The men behind him kept walking. They stepped on their fallen comrades. The French army was walking into a trap. The cavalry finally charged. The horses slipped in the mud. The archers shot them down. The survivors crashed into the stakes. The stakes impaled the horses. The cavalry melted away. The French first line reached the English position. They were exhausted. They had walked 200 yards through knee-deep mud. They could barely lift their swords. The English men-at-arms met them. These men wore lighter armor. They could move. They fought with swords, axes, and maces. They did not try to pierce the French armor. They struck the joints. They knocked the French down. Then they stabbed through the visors. The mud became a killing floor. French knights suffocated under their own armor. They drowned in the mud. The bodies piled up. The second French line advanced. They had to walk over the bodies of the first line. The mud was now slick with blood. Men slipped and fell. They could not get up. The English kept killing. Then something extraordinary happened. The Duke of Alençon, one of the highest nobles in France, fought his way to Henry V. He struck the king. He knocked the crown from Henry's head. He raised his sword for the killing blow, but Henry's bodyguard intervened. They killed the Duke. The news spread. The French realized their king might be vulnerable. They panicked. The third French line, which had not yet fought, turned and fled. The English had won, but the battle was not over. The French rear guard was still intact. Henry looked at his prisoners. There were thousands of them. If the rear guard attacked while the English guarded prisoners, the English would be destroyed. Henry made a decision. He ordered the prisoners executed. It was against the rules of war. It was against chivalry. But Henry had not come to France to follow rules. He had come to win. The English soldiers refused at first. Killing unarmed prisoners was shameful. Henry threatened to hang any man who disobeyed. The prisoners were killed. 2,000 French nobles died that day. This is the story of Agincourt, a story of how 5,000 starving men destroyed 30,000 knights, a story of how preparation defeated arrogance, a story that reminds us that numbers do not win battles, strategy does. If you want to hear more stories like this, stories of impossible victories and forgotten heroes, subscribe to this channel. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a battle. Next week, we will tell the story of Hastings, the battle that changed England forever. One arrow, one king, one day that shaped a nation. Thank you for watching.